The morning sun shone bright over London as Sergeant James Mitchell walked across the courtyard of Buckingham Palace. His red uniform was perfect. Every button gleamed. His black boots were so shiny they looked like mirrors. The tall black hat on his head made him look even taller than his 6 feet. He had been doing this job for 15 years and he took great pride in it. James stopped in front of a group of young men. They were new guards, fresh from training. Their uniforms were new too, but they did not wear them with the same confidence as James. Some looked nervous. Others seemed excited. All of them were about to learn what it really meant to be a Queen's Guard. "Listen carefully," James said in a strong, clear voice. "Today you begin the most important job in England. You will protect the Queen, you will guard her home. People from all over the world will come to look at you. They will try to make you laugh. They will try to make you move. They will try to make you speak. You must not do any of these things." Thomas Davies stood in the front row. He was 22 years old and had dreamed of this job since he was a small boy. His father had been a soldier. His grandfather too. Thomas wanted to make them proud. He listened to every word James said. "When you stand guard," James continued, "you are not just Thomas or William or Robert. You are the Queen's Guard. You represent hundreds of years of history. Kings and queens have depended on men like you. They trusted guards to keep them safe. They trusted guards to never give up, never give in, never show weakness." The new guards nodded. They understood this was serious. James walked back and forth in front of them. "The tourists will come. Oh, they will come by the thousands. They will wave at you. Little children will try to hug your legs. People will take pictures with you. Some will make funny faces. Some will tell jokes. You must ignore all of it. You are a statue. You are a rock. You do not move unless you are ordered to move." Thomas felt a small worry in his stomach. He loved children. He had always been good with them. His little sister used to make him laugh all the time. Could he really ignore a child who wanted to play? "I know what some of you are thinking," James said, as if he could read Thomas's mind. "You think it will be hard to ignore people, especially children. But remember this, your job is to protect the Queen. If you are playing with children, you are not watching for danger. If you are laughing at jokes, you are not doing your duty." James stopped walking and stood very straight. "Let me tell you about the rules. Rule number 1, you do not speak to tourists, not one word. Rule number 2, you do not smile, not even a little bit. Rule number 3, you do not move unless you are changing position or there is real danger. Rule number 4, your eyes must always be watching. Always." The sergeant pointed to the palace behind him. "In there lives the most important person in our country. She depends on us. The people of England depend on us. When they see you standing guard, they feel safe. They know someone is watching. Someone is protecting what matters most." Thomas looked at the palace. It was huge and beautiful. The windows sparkled in the sunlight. Flags flew from the roof. Somewhere inside, the Queen was probably having breakfast or reading letters. She was counting on him. He would not let her down. "Now," James said, "let me show you how to stand." He moved to the guard position. His back was perfectly straight. His chin was up. His eyes looked straight ahead. His hands held his rifle in exactly the right way. He did not blink. He did not move. He looked like a statue that someone had dressed in a red uniform. The new guards tried to copy him. Some wobbled a little. Others held their rifles wrong. James walked around them, fixing their positions. "Better," he said. "But you need practice. Lots of practice. Your feet will hurt. Your back will ache. Your arms will get tired. The sun will be hot in summer. The rain will be cold in winter. You must stand anyway. You must stand perfect anyway." Thomas felt his arms already getting tired from holding the heavy rifle. How would he hold it for hours? "In the old days," James continued, "guards who moved or spoke were punished. Some lost their jobs. Some went to prison. Today we are not so harsh, but we still expect perfection. The tourists who come here, they go home and tell their friends about the amazing guards who never move. They tell their children. Those children grow up and bring their children. It becomes a family story that lasts forever." A woman walked by with a small dog. The dog saw the guards and barked. None of the new guards moved, but Thomas wanted to look at the cute little animal. "Good," James said. "You ignored the dog. That is exactly right. Dogs, cats, birds, even horses sometimes come near you. You must ignore them all." James walked to the palace gate. Through the bars, they could see the street beyond. Already some early tourists were gathering. They had cameras and guidebooks. Children pressed their faces against the gate. "See them?" James asked. "They are waiting for you. In 1 hour, you will take your positions. They will watch you for as long as you stand there. Some will stay for 5 minutes, others will stay for an hour. A few will come back again and again, day after day. They will try to learn your secrets. They will try to find your weakness." Thomas looked at the tourists. They seemed friendly enough. There was a family with 2 small children. The children were jumping up and down with excitement. They pointed at the guards and talked quickly to their parents. "Remember," James said, "they may seem nice, but your job is not to be nice back. Your job is to be a guard. You can be nice when your shift is over and you take off that uniform. While you wear the red coat and the tall hat, you belong to the Queen." The sergeant checked his watch. "Time to get ready. Check your uniforms one more time. Make sure every button is fastened. Make sure your hat is straight. Make sure your boots are clean. In 30 minutes, you will march to your positions. The tourists will follow you. The cameras will start flashing. Your real test will begin." Thomas looked down at his uniform. Everything seemed perfect. His hands were steady. His breathing was calm. He was ready to serve his queen and his country. He was ready to be a statue in a red coat. He was ready to make his family proud. What he did not know was that in just a few days, his whole idea of what it meant to be a guard would change forever. 3 days had passed since Thomas began his duties as a Queen's guard. He stood at his post outside Buckingham Palace, his red uniform bright in the afternoon sun. His feet hurt, and his arms ached from holding the heavy rifle, but he did not move. He had learned to ignore the crowds of tourists who gathered around him every day. The tourists came in waves. First, the morning group with their coffee and cameras. Then families with children who had just finished breakfast at their hotels. In the afternoon came the school groups, dozens of children with their teachers trying to keep them quiet. Thomas had seen it all, and he had not moved once. A small girl appeared at the palace gate. She was different from the other children Thomas had seen. She wore a pink coat that was too big for her, and a knitted hat covered her head completely. Her mother held her hand tightly as they walked up to the gate. The girl was very thin. Her face was pale, almost white, but her eyes were bright and full of life. She looked up at Thomas with a huge smile. "Look, Mummy," she said in a clear, sweet voice. "It's a real guard. He's so tall and handsome." Thomas kept looking straight ahead, but he could see the little girl from the corner of his eye. She could not be more than 8 years old. There was something about her that made his heart feel heavy. "His name is Emma," the mother said quietly to someone behind her. "She's 8 years old. We're here from Manchester for her treatment." Thomas heard the word treatment and wondered what kind of treatment a little girl would need. Emma pressed her face against the gate and waved at him with both hands. "Hello, Mr. Guard," she called out. "I'm Emma. I'm staying in London for a while. My mummy said I could come see you every day if I'm good." Thomas wanted to smile at her. She was so cheerful and friendly. But he remembered his training. He was a statue. He was a rock. He did not move. Emma's mother knelt down beside her. "Remember what I told you, sweetheart. The guards can't talk to us. They have a very important job protecting the Queen." "I know," Emma said, "but I can talk to him." "Can I, even if he can't talk back?" Her mother smiled sadly. "Yes, you can talk to him." Emma turned back to Thomas. "I think you have the best job in the world, Mr. Guard. You get to live in a palace and protect the Queen. I bet she's very nice. Do you ever see her? Does she wave at you?" Thomas felt something strange happen in his chest. This little girl was so full of questions and wonder. She looked at him like he was a hero from a storybook. Most children got bored and walked away after a few minutes, but Emma seemed ready to stay all day. "We have to go now," Emma's mother said. "Your appointment is in an hour. Can we come back tomorrow?" Emma asked. "If you're feeling well enough, yes." Emma turned back to Thomas. "I'll see you tomorrow, Mr. Guard. I'll tell you about my treatment. Maybe it won't hurt so much if I think about coming to see you afterward." As they walked away, Thomas heard Emma's mother talking to another woman. "The doctors say the chemotherapy is going well, but it's so hard on her. She's been so brave, but some days she just cries. Finding something to look forward to each day helps her get through it." Thomas felt his throat get tight. Chemotherapy. That explained why Emma was so thin and pale. That explained the hat covering her head. This little girl was fighting a terrible sickness, and somehow seeing him made her happy. The next day Emma came back. This time she brought a small folded paper with her. "I drew you a picture, Mr. Guard," she said, holding up the paper. "Mummy helped me a little bit, but I did most of it myself." Thomas could see it was a drawing of a guard in a red uniform. The guard in the picture was smiling a big, happy smile. There were flowers around his feet and a rainbow in the sky above the palace. "I know you can't smile while you're working," Emma said, "but I wanted to draw you the way I think you look when you're not working. I bet you smile a lot when you're home." Emma's mother stood behind her, watching quietly. She looked tired, like she had not slept much. Her eyes were red, like she had been crying. "The treatment was harder yesterday," Emma told Thomas. "I was sick and my head hurt, but I kept thinking about coming to see you today, and that made me feel better." Thomas felt his hands start to shake a little. He tried to stop them, but this little girl's words were affecting him more than he expected. She was using him as strength to get through her pain. He was helping her be brave. Every day for the next week, Emma came to the gate. Some days she felt good and talked a lot. Other days she was quiet and just stood there looking at him. But she always came. Rain or shine, Emma was there. "You're my favorite guard," she told him one day. "I think you're the bravest person I know. Even braver than the superheroes in my books." Thomas had been called many things in his life, but never brave by someone who was fighting cancer. Emma was the brave one. She faced needles and medicine and feeling sick every day, and still she smiled. The other guards began to notice Emma too. When she walked by their posts, they all seemed to stand a little straighter. Word spread quickly among them about the little girl who came every day during her cancer treatment. Sergeant Mitchell watched from a distance. He saw how the guards' faces softened when Emma appeared. He saw how they seemed to look forward to her visits. He knew this was dangerous. Guards were not supposed to have feelings about the people they saw. They were supposed to treat everyone the same. But Mitchell also saw how happy Emma was when she visited. Her mother had told one of the palace staff that these daily visits were the only thing that got Emma out of bed some days. The little girl was fighting for her life, and somehow the guards were helping her fight. One rainy day, Emma came to the gate wearing a new hat. This one had a small crown drawn on it. "Look," she said to Thomas. "Mummy made me a crown hat. She said if I'm going to visit the Queen's palace every day, I should dress like royalty." Thomas looked down at her through the gate. The crown on her hat was crooked and drawn with marker, but she wore it like it was made of real gold. In that moment, Emma looked more royal than anyone Thomas had ever seen. "I'm going to be a queen someday," Emma announced. "And when I am, I'm going to make sure all the guards get to smile sometimes, because I think smiling makes everyone feel better." That night, Thomas lay in his small apartment thinking about Emma. He had never had a child affect him this way. He found himself looking forward to seeing her each day. He worried when she was late. He noticed when she looked more tired or more pale. This was not what he had been trained for. He was supposed to be professional. He was supposed to treat all visitors the same. But Emma was not just any visitor. She was a little girl who was fighting the biggest battle of her life, and somehow his presence helped her be strong. Thomas realized that something was changing inside him. The rigid rules he had learned were starting to feel less important than the human connection he felt with this brave little girl. He did not know it yet, but Emma was about to change everything. He thought he knew about being a guard. 2 weeks had passed since Emma first appeared at the palace gate. Word about the little girl with cancer had spread through all the guards like wildfire. Even the guards who had never seen her knew about Emma Thompson, the 8-year-old who visited every day during her treatment in London. Thomas stood at his morning post watching the street beyond the gate. He found himself looking for Emma's pink coat before the tourists even started to gather. She usually came around 10 o'clock after her morning medicine at the hospital. Guard William Parker stood at the next post, about 50 feet away. He was older than Thomas with 10 years of experience. William had always been known as the strictest guard in the regiment. He never moved, never blinked, never showed any emotion. But lately, Thomas noticed that William's eyes would search the crowd, for Emma too. There she is, Thomas thought as he saw the familiar pink coat coming down the street. But today Emma was walking much slower than usual. Her mother held her arm, helping her along. Emma's face was very pale and she looked tired. "Hello, Mr. Guard," Emma said when she reached Thomas's post. Her voice was quieter than normal. "I'm not feeling very good today. The medicine made me sick this morning, but I still wanted to come see you." Thomas felt his heart break a little. This brave little girl had dragged herself out of bed just to visit him. She was fighting so hard, and he could not even smile at her to let her know he cared. Emma sat down on the pavement near the gate. Her mother looked worried. "Maybe we should go back to the hotel," her mother said. "You need to rest." "No," Emma said firmly. "I want to stay with my guard friend for a little while. He makes me feel safe." Thomas heard those words and felt something crack inside his chest. He made her feel safe. This little girl who was facing the scariest thing anyone could face felt safe because he was there. Guard Parker, who was supposed to be looking straight ahead, found his eyes drifting toward Emma. She had taken out another drawing from her pocket. This one showed all the guards standing together protecting a little girl with a crown. "I drew all of you this time," Emma told Thomas. "You're all my heroes. I know there are lots of guards here, but you're my special one because you were the first one I met." Emma's mother knelt beside her daughter and whispered something in her ear. Emma nodded and stood up slowly. "I have to go now," Emma said. "But I'll be back tomorrow, I promise. Even if I don't feel good, I'll still come. You help me be brave." After Emma left, Thomas noticed something different about the other guards. During their break, they gathered together and talked about her. Usually, guards only talked about duty and rules. But now they talked about a little girl. "Did you see how tired she looked today?" asked Guard Harrison, who worked the afternoon shift. "Her mother told the palace staff that the treatment is getting harder," said Guard Roberts. "But Emma insists on coming here every day. She says it's the best part of her day." Sergeant Mitchell listened to these conversations with mixed feelings. On one hand, he was proud that his guards cared about people. On the other hand, he worried that they were losing their professional distance. But Mitchell had his own secret. He had started watching Emma too. When she visited, he would find reasons to walk near Thomas's post. He told himself he was just checking on his guards, but really he wanted to see the little girl who had captured everyone's attention. The next day brought rain, heavy, cold rain that made the tourists run for cover. But at 10 o'clock, Emma appeared. She wore a bright yellow raincoat and carried a small umbrella with pictures of flowers on it. "I'm here," she called out cheerfully to Thomas. "The rain can't stop me from visiting my favorite guard." Emma stood under her little umbrella, which barely kept her dry. Her mother held a bigger umbrella over both of them, but the wind kept blowing the rain sideways. "I brought you something special today," Emma said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small paper bag. "Mummy and I made cookies last night. I can't eat very many because of my medicine, but I thought you might like some for later." She placed the bag near the gate, as close to Thomas as she could get it. "I know you can't eat them now, but maybe when you're done working you can have them with tea. Mummy says cookies make everything better." Thomas stared down at the small bag. This sick little girl had spent her energy making cookies for him. She thought about him when she was not even at the palace. She cared about whether he was hungry or tired. The rain got heavier. Emma's mother looked worried. "Sweetheart, we really should go. You'll catch cold in this weather. Just 5 more minutes, Emma pleaded. I want to tell him about what the doctor said today. Emma looked up at Thomas with bright eyes. The doctor said my treatment is working. The bad cells are getting smaller. I might get to go home to Manchester sooner than we thought. Thomas felt a strange mix of happiness and sadness. He was thrilled that Emma was getting better, but he realized he would miss her daily visits. She had become part of his routine, part of what made his job meaningful. When I go home, Emma continued, I'm going to tell everyone about the brave guards at Buckingham Palace. I'm going to tell them how you protected me while I was sick. You might not know it, but you were guarding me too, not just the Queen. A gust of wind nearly knocked Emma over. Her mother caught her arm. That's enough for today, her mother said firmly. We're going back to the hotel. As they walked away, Emma turned back and waved with both hands. See you tomorrow, Mr. Guard. Thank you for keeping me safe. That evening, during the changing of the guard ceremony, something unusual happened. As Thomas marched past the spot where Emma always stood, he found himself looking for her in the crowd. For just a moment, his eyes searched the faces of the tourists, hoping to see her smile. Sergeant Mitchell noticed this small break in Thomas's perfect marching. It was tiny, barely noticeable, but Mitchell saw it. He saw how Thomas's rigid military walk softened just a bit as he passed Emma's usual spot. Later that night, Mitchell called Thomas into his office. Guard Davies, Mitchell said, I've been watching you lately. You're a good soldier, one of the best I've trained, but I'm concerned about your attachment to that little girl. Thomas stood at attention. Sir, I have not broken any rules. I have not spoken to her or moved from my post. That's true, Mitchell said, but I can see the change in you. I can see it in all the guards. That child is affecting your professional behavior. Thomas felt defensive. Sir, she's just a sick little girl who finds comfort in our presence. Surely there's no harm in that. Mitchell sighed. Thomas, I understand. I really do. But our job requires us to treat everyone equally. We can't have favorites. We can't let personal feelings cloud our judgment. But, sir, Thomas said carefully, isn't protecting innocent people part of our duty? Isn't giving comfort to a sick child something to be proud of? Mitchell looked at Thomas for a long moment. He could see the conflict in the young guard's eyes. Thomas was struggling between his training and his heart. Just remember your primary duty, Mitchell said finally. Guard the Queen, protect the palace. Everything else is secondary. Thomas nodded and left the office, but Mitchell's words stayed with him. He knew the sergeant was right about the rules, but he also knew that Emma needed him, and he was not sure he could ignore that need much longer. The other guards were changing too. They had started asking each other about Emma's health. They noticed when she missed a day. They worried when she looked extra tired. Without realizing it, they had all become emotionally invested in this little girl's battle. Something was building among the Queen's guards. A tension between duty and humanity, between rules and compassion. Emma had planted a seed that was growing stronger every day, and soon it would change everything. The morning started like any other, but Thomas could feel something was different the moment he took his position. The air was heavy with gray clouds, and a cold wind blew through the palace courtyard. He had been standing guard for 3 weeks now, and Emma had visited him every single day except one, when she had been too sick from her treatment. At 10:15, Emma had not yet appeared. Thomas tried not to worry. Sometimes she was late because of doctor appointments or because the medicine made her feel sick in the mornings. But as the minutes passed, his concern grew. Finally, at 10:30, he saw Emma and her mother coming down the street. But something was very wrong. Emma was not walking on her own. Her mother was almost carrying her, supporting most of her weight. Emma's face was so pale it was almost gray, and she moved like every step hurt. When they reached the gate, Emma did not stand up straight like usual. Instead, she sat down heavily on the pavement and leaned against the iron bars. She looked up at Thomas, and he could see that her bright, cheerful eyes were now dull and filled with tears. "Hi, Mr. Guard," she whispered. Her voice was so quiet he could barely hear her. "I'm sorry I'm late. The treatment was really hard yesterday. The doctors had to give me extra medicine and it made me very sick." Thomas felt his heart pound in his chest. Emma looked terrible. She was shaking and he could see that she was trying very hard not to cry in front of him. "Mummy wanted me to stay in bed today," Emma continued. "But I told her I had to come see you. I promised I would come every day and I don't break my promises." Emma's mother knelt beside her daughter. Her face was full of worry and sadness. She looked like she had been crying too. "The doctors say the treatment is working," Emma's mother said quietly, speaking more to herself than to anyone else. "But it's so hard on her little body. Some days I wonder if we're doing the right thing." Emma heard her mother and reached up to pat her hand. "It's okay, Mummy. The medicine hurts now, but it's making the bad cells go away. And coming to see my guard friend makes me feel better." Thomas watched this brave little girl comforting her own mother. Even though she was the one who was suffering, he had never seen such courage in his entire life. His hands began to shake as he held his rifle. "Mr. Guard," Emma said, looking up at him. "I need to tell you something important. The doctors say I might have to stay in the hospital for a few days. If I don't come to see you, it's not because I don't want to. It's because I can't walk very far right now." Thomas felt something break inside his chest. This little girl was apologizing to him for being too sick to visit. She was worried about disappointing him when she should be worried about getting better. Emma tried to stand up but stumbled. Her mother caught her quickly. "I'm okay," Emma said, but her voice was shaking. "I just felt dizzy for a minute." She looked up at Thomas again, and this time the tears in her eyes spilled over onto her cheeks. "I wish I could be as strong as you," she whispered. "You stand here every day and you're never afraid. You never cry. You never give up. I try to be brave like you, but sometimes it hurts so much." Thomas felt his own eyes fill with tears. He blinked hard, trying to make them go away, but they would not stop. For the first time in his career as a guard, he felt a tear roll down his cheek. Emma saw the tear, and her eyes grew wide. "Mr. Guard, are you crying because of me?" "I'm sorry. I made you sad. I didn't mean to." Thomas wanted to tell her that she had not made him sad. He wanted to tell her that she was the bravest person he had ever met. He wanted to tell her that she had taught him what real courage looked like. But he could not speak. All he could do was stand there and watch this beautiful, brave little girl suffer. "I have something for you," Emma said, reaching into her coat pocket with shaking hands. She pulled out a small piece of paper. "I drew this picture in the hospital yesterday. It's you and me, and we're both smiling because the bad cells are all gone." The drawing showed a guard and a little girl standing together in front of the palace. Both figures had huge smiles on their faces. The little girl in the picture had long, beautiful hair, not the bald head hidden under Emma's hat. In the picture, they were both healthy and happy. "I know you can't smile now," Emma said, "but maybe someday when I'm all better, we can both smile together." Thomas's vision became blurry with tears. His hands were shaking so hard he could barely hold his rifle steady. Every part of his training told him to control himself, to remain professional. But every part of his heart was breaking for this little girl. Emma suddenly swayed and grabbed onto the gate to keep from falling. Her mother immediately wrapped her arms around her. "That's enough for today," her mother said. "We need to get you back to the hospital." "No," Emma said weakly. "I want to stay with my guard friend. He understands how hard it is to be brave." But even as she spoke, Emma's legs gave out and she collapsed onto the pavement. Her mother caught her and held her close. "Help!" Emma's mother called out to the tourists nearby. "Please, someone help me get her to a taxi." Several people rushed over, but Emma was barely conscious. Her breathing was shallow and her skin was cold and clammy. Thomas watched all of this happen just a few feet away from him. This little girl, who had visited him every day, who had shared her drawings and her cookies and her brave words, was collapsing right in front of him. She needed help, and he was the closest person to her. But he was a guard. He had rules to follow. He had duties to fulfill. He was supposed to remain at his post no matter what happened around him. Emma's eyes fluttered open, and she looked directly at him. "I wish you could help me," she whispered so quietly that only he could hear. "I know you would if you could." In that moment, Thomas felt something fundamental change inside him. All the rules and regulations that had been drilled into him suddenly seemed less important than this one sick little girl. All the tradition and protocol in the world meant nothing compared to Emma's need. Thomas looked at Emma lying on the cold pavement, looked at her mother's terrified face, looked at the tourists who were trying to help but did not know what to do. He thought about Sergeant Mitchell's warnings about maintaining professional distance. He thought about the consequences of breaking protocol. But mostly he thought about Emma's words. "I wish I could be as brave as you." The truth was, Emma was far braver than he was. She faced her illness every day with more courage than he had ever shown. And now she needed someone to be brave for her. Thomas felt his grip on his rifle loosen. His feet, which had been planted firmly in position for 3 weeks, began to shift. The moment that would change everything was about to happen, and there was no going back. The moment came without warning. Emma's small body went completely limp in her mother's arms. Her eyes rolled back and her breathing became so shallow it was barely visible. The tourists around her began to panic. "Call an ambulance," someone shouted. "Is there a doctor here?" called another voice. Emma's mother was crying now, holding her daughter tightly. "Emma, stay with me. Please, sweetheart, stay with me." Thomas watched all of this happening just 10 feet away from him. His training screamed at him to stay in position. Sergeant Mitchell's voice echoed in his head. "You are a statue. You are a rock. You do not move unless ordered to move." But Emma's weak voice from just moments before whispered louder, "I wish you could help me." The crowd was growing larger, but no one seemed to know what to do. Emma's mother was too scared to think clearly. The tourists were taking pictures instead of helping. A little girl was dying, and Thomas was the only person close enough to really help her. Without thinking, Thomas stepped forward. It was the first time in 3 weeks that he had moved from his post without permission. His heavy black boots made a loud sound on the pavement as he walked toward Emma. The crowd turned to stare at him in shock. "Move back," Thomas said firmly, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Give her room to breathe." The tourists stepped away immediately. There was something about Thomas's voice and presence that made people listen to him. Even in civilian clothes, he would have commanded respect. In his red uniform with his tall hat, he seemed like a giant among them. Thomas knelt down beside Emma and her mother. Up close, he could see how small and fragile Emma really was. Her lips were blue and her skin was cold as ice. "Sir, you're not supposed to leave your post," someone in the crowd said nervously. Thomas ignored them completely. He had made his choice. "Emma," he said softly, speaking to her for the first time ever. His voice was gentle and warm. "Emma, can you hear me? It's your guard friend." Emma's eyes fluttered open at the sound of his voice. When she saw Thomas kneeling beside her, a small smile appeared on her pale lips. "You came to help me," she whispered. "I knew you would. I knew you were brave enough." "I'm here," Thomas said, taking off his heavy black gloves and touching Emma's cold hand with his warm one. "You're going to be okay, I promise." Thomas looked up at Emma's mother. "What's her condition? What should I do?" "She has leukemia," Emma's mother said through her tears. "The chemotherapy makes her very weak. Sometimes she just collapses like this. We need to get her to the hospital quickly." Thomas picked Emma up in his strong arms. She weighed almost nothing. He could feel how fragile she was, like a small bird with broken wings. "Which hospital?" he asked. "Great Ormond Street," Emma's mother replied. "It's about 10 minutes by car." Thomas looked around at the crowd. "Does anyone have a car nearby?" 3 people stepped forward immediately, offering to drive. Thomas chose the closest car and carried Emma toward it, her mother walking beside him. As they moved through the crowd, more guards appeared. Word had spread quickly that Thomas had left his post. Sergeant Mitchell came running from the palace, his face red with anger and concern. "Davies!" Mitchell shouted. "What are you doing? Get back to your position immediately." Thomas stopped and turned to face his sergeant. Emma was still in his arms, unconscious again. Her mother was crying beside him. The crowd was watching everything. "Sir," Thomas said calmly, "this little girl is very sick. She needs help. I cannot stand by and watch her suffer when I can do something about it." "That is not your job," Mitchell said. "Your job is to guard the palace. Other people can help. Her." Thomas looked down at Emma in his arms, then back at Mitchell. "Sir, with all due respect, sometimes our real job is bigger than our official job. Sometimes we have to choose between following rules and doing what's right." The crowd murmured with approval. Several people began clapping. Someone shouted, "Good for you, guard." Mitchell's face grew even redder. "You are breaking direct orders. You could lose your job for this." "Then I lose my job," Thomas said simply. "Some things are more important than jobs." Thomas continued walking toward the car, carrying Emma. As he moved, something unexpected happened. The other guards who had gathered around began to follow him. First one, then two, then all of them. They formed a protective circle around Thomas, and Emma walking with them toward the car. Guard Parker, the strict 10-year veteran, fell into step beside Thomas. "If Davies is in trouble for this, then we all are," he said loudly enough for Mitchell to hear. Guard Harrison nodded. "The little girl needs help. We're going to help her." Guard Roberts added, "Sometimes being a good soldier means knowing when to break the rules." The tourists in the crowd began cheering as they saw all the guards walking together. Cameras flashed everywhere. People were crying and clapping at the same time. Emma opened her eyes again as Thomas placed her gently in the backseat of the car. "All the guards came to help me," she whispered in wonder. "They're all my heroes." Thomas knelt beside the open car door. "Emma, you're the bravest soldier I've ever met. You're braver than any of us. You fight every day and you never give up. You teach us what real courage looks like." Emma smiled weakly. "Will you visit me in the hospital?" "If they let me, I'll be there every day," Thomas promised. As the car drove away, Thomas stood in the street and watched it disappear into London traffic. Around him, the other guards stood quietly. The crowd was still cheering, but Thomas barely heard them. Sergeant Mitchell walked up to Thomas, his face serious. "Davies, you know what this means. I have to report this. You broke protocol in front of hundreds of witnesses. There will be consequences." Thomas nodded. "I understand, sir." "Do you regret it?" Mitchell asked. Thomas thought for a moment, then shook his head. "No, sir. I don't regret it at all." Mitchell looked at Thomas for a long time. Then he looked at all the other guards who had supported Thomas. Finally, he looked at the crowd of tourists who were still talking excitedly about what they had witnessed. "Get back to your posts," Mitchell said quietly. "All of you." As the guards walked back toward the palace, Thomas heard people in the crowd talking. "Did you see that? The guard broke ranks to help that little girl. That was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Those guards have hearts after all. I'm going to tell everyone about this when I get home." Thomas returned to his post, but everything felt different now. He had crossed a line that he could never uncross. He had chosen humanity over duty, compassion over rules. And despite the trouble he knew was coming, he felt more like a real guard than he ever had before. Emma had taught him that sometimes the most important battle is not the one you fight for your country, but the one you fight for a single person who needs you. And sometimes winning that battle means losing everything else. But as Thomas stood at his post and remembered Emma's smile when she saw him coming to help her, he knew he had made the right choice. Rules could be rewritten, but the memory of helping someone who needed him would last forever. The next morning, Thomas was called to the office of Colonel James Whitmore, the commanding officer of the Queen's Guard. Thomas had barely slept the night before, thinking about what punishment might be waiting for him. He knew that breaking ranks in front of hundreds of tourists was a serious offense. Thomas knocked on the heavy wooden door and waited. "Enter," came a stern voice from inside. Thomas walked into the office and stood at attention. Colonel Whitmore was a tall, thin man, with gray hair and sharp blue eyes. He had been in the military for 30 years and was known for being very strict about rules and discipline. "Guard Davies," the colonel said without looking up from the papers on his desk. "Do you know why you're here?" "Yes, sir. I broke protocol yesterday by leaving my post to assist a civilian." Colonel Whitmore finally looked up at Thomas. His expression was unreadable. "That's a very simple way to describe what happened. Let me tell you what I've been dealing with since yesterday afternoon." The colonel stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the palace courtyard. "First, I received a very angry phone call from the Ministry of Defense. They were upset that one of our guards had been filmed breaking ranks. The video is all over the internet now, and people are calling it everything from heartwarming to a breakdown in military discipline." Thomas felt his stomach sink. He had not thought about cameras and the internet. In today's world, everything was recorded and shared within minutes. "Then," the colonel continued, "I received another phone call from the Prime Minister's office. They wanted to know if the Queen's Guards were losing their famous composure. They were concerned about the image this might send to the world." Thomas waited for the punishment to come. He would probably be dismissed from the Guard, maybe even court-martialed. But then, Colonel Whitmore said, turning back to Thomas, "Something very interesting happened. My phone started ringing with different kinds of calls." The colonel picked up a stack of papers from his desk. "These are printouts of emails we've received in the last 18 hours. Would you like to hear some of them?" Thomas nodded, confused. Colonel Whitmore put on his reading glasses. "This one is from a woman in Canada. I saw the video of your guard helping that sick little girl. It made me cry tears of joy. That guard showed the world what true honor looks like." He picked up another paper. "This one is from a man in Japan. I have always admired the Queen's Guards for their discipline. Now I admire them even more for their humanity." Thomas stood very still, not understanding what was happening. "Here's one from Australia," the colonel continued. "A mother wrote, 'My daughter has cancer too. When she saw that guard help Emma, she said she wants to be brave like both of them. Thank you for showing her that strong people help each other.'" "Colonel." Whitmore set the papers down and looked directly at Thomas. "Davies, in 18 hours we have received over 3,000 emails and messages. 98% of them are positive. People are praising you and the other guards who supported you." Thomas felt his head spinning. He had expected anger and punishment, not praise. "But that's not all," the colonel said. "The video of you helping Emma has been viewed over 2 million times. News stations around the world are calling it the most human moment in Royal Guard history. The hashtag #BraveGuard is trending on social media." Thomas did not know what to say. "Sir, I just wanted to help her." "I know," Colonel Whitmore said. "And that's exactly what makes this situation so complicated." The colonel sat down behind his desk again. "On one hand, you violated direct orders and broke centuries of protocol. On the other hand, you've done more for the reputation of the Queen's Guard in one day than our public relations department has done in 10 years. There was a soft knock on the door. "Come in," the colonel called. Sergeant Mitchell entered the room looking nervous. "Sir, you asked me to bring you the latest reports." "Yes," Colonel Whitmore said. "Tell Guard Davies what you've learned." Mitchell cleared his throat. "Sir, I've been in contact with Great Ormond Street Hospital. Emma Thompson is stable and responding well to treatment. The doctors say that the emotional boost from yesterday's events has actually helped her recovery." Thomas felt relief wash over him. "She's okay?" "More than okay," Mitchell continued. "Her mother called this morning. She wanted me to tell you that Emma hasn't stopped talking about how her guard heroes came to help her. The little girl is more determined than ever to get better." Colonel Whitmore leaned back in his chair. "Davies, do you understand the position you've put me in? I have rules to enforce, but I also have a country to serve. And right now the country seems to think you did exactly the right thing." Thomas thought carefully before speaking. "Sir, I understand that I broke the rules. I'm prepared to accept whatever punishment you think is appropriate. But I want you to know that I would do the same thing again." The colonel raised an eyebrow. "You would?" "Yes, sir. Emma needed help and I was the only one close enough to help her. Sometimes following orders means doing what's right, even if it's not what's written in the manual. Colonel Whitmore was quiet for a long moment. Then he opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out an official-looking document. Davies, I could court-martial you for this. I could have you dismissed from service. I could end your military career. Thomas stood straighter. I understand, sir. But, the colonel continued, I've also received a very interesting phone call this morning. It was from Buckingham Palace. Her Majesty the Queen herself wanted to discuss yesterday's events. Thomas's eyes widened. The Queen knew about what he had done? Her Majesty, Colonel Whitmore said, was very clear about her feelings. She said, and I quote, "The highest duty of any guard is to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Guard Davies and his colleagues showed the world what it truly means to serve." Thomas could hardly believe what he was hearing. Colonel Whitmore stood up and walked around his desk to stand in front of Thomas. The Queen has requested a private meeting with you, Davies. She wants to thank you personally for your actions. Thomas felt his knees go weak. The Queen wants to meet me? Yes. And she's also asked to meet Emma Thompson and her mother. Her Majesty wants to visit Emma in the hospital. Sergeant Mitchell spoke up. Sir, there's something else. The public response has been so positive that the palace is considering new guidelines for the guards. Situations involving medical emergencies or threats to children would allow for temporary breaks in protocol. Colonel Whitmore nodded. What you did yesterday, Davies, has started a conversation about what it really means to serve and protect. You've shown that sometimes the most important battles are fought not with weapons, but with compassion. Thomas felt overwhelmed. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep being the kind of guard who knows when to follow rules and when to follow his heart, Colonel Whitmore replied. The Queen's Guard doesn't just protect buildings and ceremonies. We protect the values that make this country great. Yesterday you protected the most important value of all, caring for those who need our help. The colonel picked up the official document from his desk. Instead of handing it to Thomas, he tore it in half. That was your dismissal order, he said. I'm tearing it up because I believe the Queen's Guard needs more soldiers like you, not fewer. Thomas felt tears in his eyes again, but this time they were tears of relief and gratitude. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. You already haven't, Colonel Whitmore said with a small smile. Now go get ready. You have a queen to meet, and a little girl who's waiting to see her hero again. As Thomas left the office, he realized that everything had changed. The rules were still important, but now there was room for something more important: human kindness. Emma had not just changed him, she had changed the entire Queen's Guard. 3 days later, Thomas stood outside Emma's hospital room at Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital. He was not wearing his red uniform today. Instead, he wore a simple blue suit that made him look like any other visitor. But his posture and the way he carried himself still showed that he was a soldier. Through the small window in the door, Thomas could see Emma sitting up in bed. She looked much better than she had 3 days ago. Her color had returned, and she was talking animatedly to her mother. When she saw Thomas at the door, her face lit up with the biggest smile he had ever seen. "My guard friend," Emma called out as Thomas entered the room. "You came to visit me just like you promised." Thomas walked over to her bed and smiled. It felt strange to smile while on duty, even unofficial duty, but it also felt right. "How are you feeling, Emma?" he asked. "Much better," Emma said proudly. "The doctors say the medicine is working really well now, and guess what? I get to go home to Manchester next week." Thomas felt genuinely happy for her. "That's wonderful news." Emma's mother stood up from her chair beside the bed. "Guard Davies, I can never thank you enough for what you did. You saved my daughter's life." "Please, just call me Thomas," he said. "And I think Emma saved herself. She's the bravest person I know." Emma giggled. "Thomas, I finally know your real name. I always wondered what to call you besides Mr. Guard." Thomas sat down in the chair next to Emma's bed. For the next hour, they talked like old friends. Emma told him about the other children in the hospital and how she had been telling everyone about her guard heroes. Thomas told her about his family and why he had wanted to become a guard. "I have something for you," Emma said, reaching under her pillow. She pulled out a small package wrapped in colorful paper. "Mummy helped me make it while I was in the hospital." Thomas carefully unwrapped the package. Inside was a small photo album. The first page had the original drawing Emma had made of him, showing the guard with a big smile. The next pages had new drawings she had made in the hospital, pictures of all the guards helping her, pictures of Thomas carrying her to the car, and pictures of what she imagined their friendship would look like when she was all better. "This is beautiful, Emma," Thomas said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll treasure it forever." "Turn to the last page," Emma said excitedly. Thomas flipped to the final page and saw a drawing that made his heart skip. It showed Emma, healthy, and with long hair again, standing next to Thomas at the palace gate. Both of them were smiling, and above them was written in Emma's careful handwriting, "Thank you for showing me that being brave means helping others." Before Thomas could respond, there was a knock at the door. A nurse entered, looking very formal and nervous. "Excuse me," the nurse said. "Emma, you have some very special visitors." The door opened wider and in walked Colonel Whitmore, followed by a woman in an elegant blue coat and hat. Thomas immediately recognized her and stood up quickly. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing slightly. Emma's eyes grew as wide as saucers. "Mummy," she whispered. "Is that really the Queen?" The Queen smiled warmly and walked over to Emma's bed. "Hello, Emma. I'm very pleased to meet you." Emma tried to sit up straighter in bed, suddenly shy. "Your Majesty, I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything special," the Queen said kindly. "I came here to thank you." "To thank me?" Emma asked, confused. "But I didn't do anything." The Queen sat down on the edge of Emma's bed. "Oh, but you did. You did something very important. You showed my guards what it means to be truly brave. You taught them that sometimes the most important duty is to help someone who needs you." Emma looked over at Thomas, then back at the Queen. "Thomas is a hero. He saved me when I was very sick." "Yes, he did," the Queen agreed. "But do you know what makes him a hero? It's not his uniform or his training. It's his kind heart, and you helped him find that." The Queen reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet box. "Emma, I have something for you. It's very special." She opened the box to reveal a small pin in the shape of a crown, made of silver and decorated with tiny diamonds. "This is an honorary medal," the Queen explained. "It's for people who show extraordinary courage. I think you've been very courageous in fighting your illness, and you've inspired others to be courageous too." Emma's mother began to cry quietly as the Queen pinned the medal to Emma's hospital gown. "Your Majesty," Emma said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, dear." "Are you going to punish Thomas for breaking the rules to help me? Because if you are, I want to take his punishment instead. It's my fault he got in trouble." The Queen smiled and looked over at Thomas. "What do you think, Guard Davies? Should I punish you for your actions?" Thomas stood at attention even in his civilian clothes. "Your Majesty, I accept full responsibility for my actions. I would do the same thing again if needed." "I know you would," the Queen said. "And that's exactly why I'm not punishing you. Instead, I'm promoting you." Thomas looked stunned. "Your Majesty? You're being promoted to senior guard with special responsibility for community relations. Your job will be to help bridge the gap between the palace and the people we serve." What you did for Emma showed the world that the Queen's Guard cares about more than just ceremony. We care about people. Emma clapped her hands together. "Thomas, you got promoted. That's even better than not getting in trouble," the Queen laughed. "You're absolutely right, Emma." Colonel Whitmore stepped forward. "Davies, there's something else. Based on public response to your actions, we're establishing new protocols. Guards will now be trained to recognize medical emergencies and other humanitarian situations. When human life is at stake, guards are authorized to provide assistance. These will be called the Emma Protocols," the Queen added, looking at the little girl with affection. Emma's face turned bright red with embarrassment and pride. "They're Naming rules after me? Indeed they are, the Queen said, because sometimes an 8-year-old girl can teach grown-ups important lessons about what really matters. The Queen stood up and looked around the room. Thomas, Emma, I want you to know that what happened between you two has reminded all of us why we serve. We don't serve rules or traditions. We serve people. We serve kindness. We serve love. Emma reached out and took Thomas's hand. Your Majesty, does this mean Thomas and I can be friends forever? I think that would be wonderful, the Queen replied. In fact, I have a special invitation for you, Emma. When you're feeling completely better, I would like you and your family to come to Buckingham Palace for a proper visit. Thomas can give you a personal tour. Emma looked like she might faint from excitement. Really? I can come inside the palace? Of course, and perhaps you can bring some of your drawings to show me. I'd very much like to see them. As the Queen prepared to leave, she turned to Thomas one more time. Guard Davies, you showed remarkable judgment under pressure. You chose compassion over protocol, and in doing so you made the crown proud. That's exactly the kind of guard I want protecting my realm. After the Queen left, Thomas sat back down beside Emma's bed. The little girl was still staring at the door in amazement. Thomas, she said quietly, I can't believe the Queen came to see me. This is the best day of my whole life. Mine too, Thomas said, and he meant it. Emma looked at her new medal, then at Thomas. You know what the best part is? Now everyone will know that being brave doesn't mean you can't cry or ask for help. Being brave means you help other people even when it's hard. Thomas nodded. You taught me that, Emma. You taught all of us. That evening, as Thomas walked through London back to his apartment, he thought about how much had changed in just a few days. He had started as a guard who followed every rule without question. Now he was a guard who understood that some things were more important than rules. Emma had not just changed his life. She had changed what it meant to be a Queen's Guard. And tomorrow he would return to his post knowing that his real job was not just to protect a building or follow traditions. His real job was to protect the things that made life worth living: kindness, courage, and love. 6 months later, the early morning sun shone brightly over Buckingham Palace as Thomas took his position at the main gate. Everything looked the same as it had on his first day: the red uniform, the tall black hat, the shiny rifle. But everything was different too. Thomas now wore a small silver pin on his uniform that marked him as a senior guard. More importantly, he carried himself with a new understanding of what his job really meant. He was still a protector of tradition and ceremony, but he was also something more: a guardian of human dignity. The tourists began to gather as they did every morning. Thomas watched them with different eyes now. Where he once saw potential distractions from his duty, he now saw people with their own stories, their own struggles, their own hopes. A young mother approached the gate with her 5-year-old son. The little boy was in a wheelchair, and his legs were covered by a bright blue blanket. He looked up at Thomas with wide, curious eyes. "Mummy, why is the guard so tall?" the boy asked. "He's tall so he can see far away and keep everyone safe," his mother explained. The boy studied Thomas carefully. "Is he nice?" Thomas felt a small smile touch the corner of his mouth. 6 months ago, he would have remained completely expressionless. Today he allowed that tiny smile to show. "I think he is," the mother said, noticing Thomas's gentle expression. At exactly 10 o'clock, Thomas saw a familiar figure walking down the street. Emma Thompson was coming toward the palace, but she looked completely different from the sick little girl he had first met. Her hair had grown back into beautiful brown curls that bounced as she walked. Her cheeks were pink with health. She wore a bright yellow dress and carried a small bouquet of flowers. "Thomas," Emma called out happily as she approached, "I'm here for my palace tour." Thomas's face broke into a wide smile. "Emma, you look wonderful." "I feel wonderful," Emma said, spinning around to show off her dress. "The doctors say I'm completely healthy now. No more treatments, no more hospital visits. I'm just a normal little girl again." Emma's parents walked beside her, both beaming with joy. Her father shook Thomas's hand warmly. "We can never thank you enough," he said. "You gave us our daughter back." "Emma gave herself back," Thomas replied. "I just helped a little." Colonel Whitmore appeared from inside the palace. "Miss Emma Thompson, are you ready for your royal tour?" "Yes, sir," Emma said, saluting playfully. "I've been practicing my best manners." As they walked through the palace gates, Emma took Thomas's hand. "I have something to tell you," she whispered. "I've decided what I want to be when I grow up." "What's that?" Thomas asked. "I want to be a guard just like you, but a special kind of guard who helps sick children feel brave." Thomas felt his heart swell with pride. "I think you'd be the best guard in the world." The palace tour lasted 2 hours. Emma saw the throne room, the state dining room, and the famous balcony where the royal family appeared during celebrations. But her favorite part was the private study where she got to have tea and biscuits with Thomas, while he told her stories about palace life. "You know what the best part of being better is?" Emma said as she munched on a chocolate biscuit. "What's that?" "Now I can help other kids who are scared. When I was in the hospital, I met lots of children who were just starting their treatments. I told them all about you and how you helped me be brave. Some of them wanted to come see the guards too." Thomas leaned forward with interest. "Really?" "Oh yes," Emma said excitedly. "There's a little boy named David who has the same sickness I had, and a girl named Sophie who has to have surgery on her heart. They all want to meet the brave guards who helped the girl with cancer." That afternoon, as Emma and her family prepared to return to Manchester, she handed Thomas a thick envelope. "What's this?" he asked. "Letters," Emma said, "from all the children in the hospital. They wrote them for you and the other guards. They want you to know that you're their heroes too." Thomas opened the envelope and read the first letter. It was written in crayon by a 6-year-old boy. "Dear guard, my name is Michael. I have to stay in the hospital for a long time. Emma told me about how you helped her when she was scared. Can you help me be brave too? I promise to be good if you can visit me sometime." Thomas felt tears in his eyes as he read letter after letter from children facing their own battles. Each one asked for the same thing: a visit from the brave guards who had helped Emma. "Emma," Thomas said, "would you like to help me plan something special?" "What kind of special?" Emma asked, her eyes lighting up. "What if we organized visits to the hospital? Not just me, but all the guards who helped you that day. We could visit the children and show them that they have friends who believe in them." Emma jumped up and down with excitement. "Yes, yes, yes, that would be the most wonderful thing ever." 3 weeks later, the first official Guard Angel visit took place at Great Ormond Street Hospital. Thomas and 5 other guards, still in their uniforms, spent the afternoon with children who were fighting various illnesses. They told stories, played games, and most importantly, they listened. 8-year-old David, who was going through chemotherapy just like Emma had, sat on Thomas's lap as he read from a book of fairy tales. "Are you really as brave as Emma says?" David asked quietly. "Emma is much braver than any of us," Thomas replied. "But we're brave enough to be here with you. And that's what matters." The visits became a monthly tradition. The guards would come to the hospital in small groups, spending time with children who needed to see that strong, brave people cared about them. The program became so popular that other hospitals in London requested visits too. Emma became the unofficial ambassador for the program. Even though she was healthy now, she continued to visit the hospital as a volunteer, helping new patients understand that recovery was possible and that they were not alone. 1 year after that first day, when Emma had collapsed at the palace gate, Thomas stood at his post watching a group of children from the hospital taking a special tour of the palace grounds. Emma was with them, now 9 years old and full of energy, explaining to the younger children how the guards had helped her when she was sick. "The most important thing to remember," Emma told a little girl who was bald from chemotherapy, "is that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. Being brave means you keep going even when you are scared. And it means you help other people keep going too." Thomas watched Emma teach these lessons with the wisdom of someone who had faced death and won. She had grown from a sick little girl into a confident young person who used her experience to help others. As the sun began to set over London, Thomas reflected on everything that had changed since Emma first appeared at the palace gate. The Emma protocols were now standard training for all Queen's Guards. The Guard Angel program had expanded to hospitals across Britain. Most importantly, the guards themselves had learned that their highest duty was not to regulations or traditions, but to the protection of human dignity and hope. Thomas's radio crackled with a message from the guard station. "Davies, there's a family at the East Gate. They say their daughter is starting cancer treatment next week and wanted to meet the guard who helped Emma Thompson." Thomas smiled and responded, "On my way." As he walked toward the East Gate, Thomas thought about the little girl who had changed everything. Emma had taught him that true strength came not from standing perfectly still, but from knowing when to move. She had shown him that the most important battles were not fought with weapons, but with compassion. At the East Gate, Thomas met 6-year-old Lucy and her parents. Lucy was scared about starting treatment, but when she saw Thomas in his red uniform and tall hat, her face lit up with wonder. "Are you really the guard who helped Emma?" Lucy asked in a small voice. "I am," Thomas said, kneeling down to her level. "And Emma asked me to give you a message. She said to tell you that you're going to be just as brave as she was and that all the guards are rooting for you." Lucy's mother began to cry quietly, but they were tears of gratitude and hope. "Will you be my friend while I'm getting better?" Lucy asked. "I would be honored to be your friend," Thomas replied. "And I promise you this. Whenever you need to remember how brave you are, you can come here, and we'll remind you." As Thomas stood up and looked at this new little girl who would soon begin her own battle, he understood that Emma's greatest gift was not just her recovery, but her legacy. She had shown that one small person's courage could change an entire institution, that kindness was stronger than any rule, and that the most important duty of any guard was to protect the precious spark of hope in every human heart. The story that had begun with a sick little girl and a rigid soldier had become something beautiful, a reminder that in a world that often felt cold and distant, there were still people willing to break ranks, to risk everything, to choose love over protocol. Emma Thompson had taught the Queen's Guards what it really meant to serve. And in the years to come, countless children would find strength in the story of the little girl who made the bravest soldiers in Britain discover their own hearts.